This week, the initiative is still poking stuff in the north. FI.RE coalition continues to harass IGC and Red Menace coalition in the south. PAPI introduces the blaster Harpy to its doctrines as the attempts to anchor a structure in the O-EIMK constellation continues. A random Titan dies in Aquarius, and I have 2 more Procuroscope syndication skins to give away. Hello pod people, I'm Frost, and this is your EVE Online War Update. Welcome back. So before we jump into the news, I have to announce my 2 Procuroscope syndication skin winners. And my winners this week are FKA Bell or FK Abel and Alex Nestorenko. These are your YouTube names. Please check your comments and reply to my comments and contact me on Discord so you can claim your prizes. All right, let's move into the news. So as always, up into my box, we have Dotlan in dark skin mode. Once again, a big shout out to Walari for making Dotlan. If you can contribute and help him out, that's always a good thing. Okay, so I have my pen at the ready. I'm going to circle the areas that we're going to be looking at. So as always, Fountain, Delve, Aquarius, Catch, Mencia, Tenerife, we're going to leave out Omist again. Fether, Bolus, we're going to include Esoteria, we're going to miss out those 2. And then we're going to also cover in the north, just the Forge and Ethereum Reach. I may also actually very quickly mention something in Pure Blind and Tribute about fraternity, which came up, which may be of interest. So I'll mention that right at the end. Okay, so there we go. So those are the areas that we're going to be cover. First thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into Ethereum Reach. As you can see, I've got my iHubs up. And the thing to note is all of these systems here, all of these Horde systems that are in green, were reinforced by the initiative. I double checked to see who reinforced them, and the initiative stated that it was them. They've basically been continuing their kind of harassment up in the north. So if you remember, they're based in the Forge, in low sec, in a station in Uemon with some structures anchored just on grid with them as well. And they've been coming in, and one of the things they've been doing, as always, is killing the jump gate in LXQ2. So the jump gate is right here, and it links up into Kalevala or Kalevala expanse, just next door to R10, which is one of the Pandemic Horde staging systems. So it's kind of an important gate, and it's kind of like a weekly thing now that the initiative come and reinforce that. They didn't use much. They actually just had 6 people do the damage, so a few Vedmax and a couple of bombers and a Hecate. So obviously Pandemic Horde didn't come and rescue this. I think Horde are quite happy just to let them die and then just replace them as and when, as it's literally just a sort of $1.5 billion, and a bit of trouble for them to go and re-anchor it. And that's probably what takes less effort than actually bringing up a whole fleet to protect it. So I imagine we're going to see this happening on a regular basis as we move on. So if we come back out of Ethereum Reach and we go to Uemon, so just so you're aware, Uemon is down in the corner down here. There we go. And there's LXQ right next door. So there's 2 jumps into LXQ2. And the main thing I wanted to just bring up is that some good fights have been happening for both the Initiative and Pandemic Horde. And Fraternity have been getting involved as well. So I understand the Initiative have been potentially poking into Fraternity space. I think it's Veil of the Silent as well. And I have a couple of battle reports here. And it's just to kind of show you the numbers, that there are actually some good fights happening in this part of the world. So you can see that Team A, which is the Initiative, Goonswarm TNT, basically the Imperium, versus Pandemic Hordes, Reckless Contingency, Slice. So all of these are PanFam. And the numbers are very, very equal. And as you can see, the damage dealt as well, it's kind of pretty much balanced. So here, we had some Munins and on both sides, they kind of engaged each other. As I understand, the Munins then kind of ran away and went back to Uemon, at which point Fraternity were waiting for them. So there's another battle report right here. And what's interesting is that they actually undocked some capitals in Losec, which was a pretty bold move. There you go. I'm just going to, with my super thick pen again. And they managed to dock them all back up again without them getting pointed. So it looks like the Fraternity weren't expecting this, didn't bring any kind of heavy tackle with them, some heavy interdictors, and weren't able to tackle these, and so they're able to dock up. So don't forget, in Losec there are no bubbles, so heavy interdictors are your only option to be able to grab these capitals and stop them from docking. Okay, let me sort out my pen quickly. while I remember, and then we can move on. So that's pretty much it for the north. It was just kind of let you know that we've got some battles going on up that part of the world, and some people are getting some good fights out of it. Okay, so if we move down south, we're going to go to Tenerife. So Tenerife, I mentioned last week about literally triggered just taking this one eye hub, and now it's gone super thin. So we'll go there we go. This one eye hub in BB-EFEKF. And I actually spoke to Literally Triggered. I actually forgot that they were part of Winter Coalition. So Winter Coalition being Fraternity and Literally Triggered and a whole bunch of others that live up in the north, so sort of Tribute and around that area. And I don't know what they're up to. It is actually OPSEC, and I don't like to be told about anything that's OPSEC. I like to find out through public information. So they're up to something, but I don't know what. I think they've got a target somewhere down here in the south, and they decide to set up shop there. And that's pretty much all the news there is for Tenerife. Otherwise, not much else is going on. So we can jump straight on. And let's see. Oh yeah, I got to mention Curse as well. So with Curse, if you remember last week, there was a clearing out of the initiative structures, and this week the clear out just was completed. Essentially, it wasn't defended, and there was a Fortizar and a Tatara that belonged to the initiative that were cleared out. So that's kind of all done and dusted now. Then in Mencia. So in Mencia, here we go. If you remember, there was a coalition, an alliance I didn't know very much about called Lollipop Monopoly, and they had these three systems here. I've spoken to Lollipop, and apparently they moved out. As you can see, then the systems have actually now been taken by the Minions, who are another alliance I don't know anything about. There are only 72 characters in this alliance, so it's a very small alliance. Don't know anything about them, so if you Minions want to get in touch with me, my Discord is in the link below. I always like to find out about new alliances. And in the meantime, Lollipop Monopoly, as I understand, are looking to move towards Fountain, and maybe joining Fountain Book Club, FAPI, or Fountain Coalition. I still don't know if they have an official name yet, so I just use all three every time. Okay, so that's what's going on there, and that's pretty much for Mencia. Mencia is quiet in terms of strategic warfare. Anyway, as always, almost nothing happening. So we're going to move on to Catch. Catch, once again, nothing's going on here. Everything's super quiet from a sort of sovereignty point of view. There was one brave structure that died. Let me have a look. Yeah, Satio died to a Dreadblom fleet. And that was pretty much it. So that's it for Catch. So then we can go on to Impasse. So Impasse, they've been getting harassed by FI Coalition. And I understand from FI Coalition, they've basically been reinforcing structures all over the place in Impasse. And these have been uncontested as well. So not quite sure what's going on there. No SOV attacks as yet. That may change. Although I do think FI Coalition are kind of stretching themselves if they want to go and do SOV warfare in Impasse. It is kind of a little bit out of their way, but they have been, as I say, been shooting stuff here, and I believe they killed an Asbel and a Sinojammer was that in Mencia or was that in Impasse? Yeah, in 68FT. Is that in Impasse? Let me just double check. I'm pretty good with my names. Yeah, there we go. So it's in Impasse. So let's find that. Where is it? There we go. Right in the middle. So right in the middle of Impasse. So an Asbel and, like I said, a Sinojammer died there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to Bolus, because Bolus is also relevant to FI Coalition. So if you remember, FI Coalition have been harassing IGC and shooting all their structures, while Army of Mango have been kind of going after their SOV, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think Army of Mango have gone after SOV, and so have FI.RE actually. And slowly but surely, IGC are losing SOV. But more importantly, they're losing structures, and they're losing a lot of structures. They've lost 5 Fortizars this week, and actually only one was attempted to be defended, and that was the one in 23M-PX. And for that, IGC showed up, Dreadbomb came to help, and so did Red Alliance. But the Fortizars still died. But otherwise, these Fortizars are dying uncontested. So yeah, it looks like, I don't know how long IGC are going to be able to hold out, because it doesn't look like they're getting much support from third parties like Dreadbomb or from Red Menace Coalition. I think Red Menace kind of may have to start thinking about Impasse and looking after their own territory. And maybe that's one of the reasons why FI Coalition is kind of aggressing in Impasse, is to try and put more stress on IGC and stop them from getting support. So just speculation there, but that would kind of make sense from a strategic point of view. All right, so time for my giveaway. Once again, these are the Procuroscope syndication skins. I have 2 to give away. If you're not familiar with the format, the way that it works is to be entered into the prize draw. You have to put a comment down below with a particular keyword, and you have to complete a whole sentence. You can't just put the word on its own. I need a whole sentence so I can recognize you in the comments when I do the random search. And the word this day, the keyword is Harpy. As you will see later on, Harpies are very relevant to the war at the moment. And so that is the keyword, Harpy. And your cutoff date is 1800 on Friday, the 28th of May, 2021. If you post a comment after that, I'm afraid you will be too late for the draw. Okay, there we go. All right, time to move on. Now we're going to go on to Esoteria. So in Esoteria, the main thing to note is in this corner up here. This all used to be kind of Bastion and Ferrata Victrix. And you can see that AOM are slowly but surely pushing their way into Esoteria. And as I understand, the Bastion are potentially moving out. I have heard rumors. I've had it said to me, put it that way, from pretty good sources, but I can't confirm that 100%. I believe they're moving to Stain. I haven't had a chance, unfortunately, I've been really busy. I haven't had a chance to put characters into Stain to take a look. So at the moment, I believe that is correct, but I'm not 100% certain on that. It's interesting though, because obviously the Bastions still have some territory in Bolus. Did we cover Bolus? I can't even remember. Yeah, we did cover Bolus. I don't know whether they're going to leave anything there or if they're just going to abandon stuff. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on that for next week. There was also a fight that broke out in R-ARKN. It wasn't related to the war specifically. I have a battle report for it somewhere. Is it this one? Here we go. And it does look like it was snuffed out, managed to catch a super capital at a guess, because what I'm seeing is if we scroll down here, you can see a bunch of devoters showed up, and there was a hell of a lot of super caps that were undocked by Army of Mango. So it looks like that was the case, but the initiative have been poking up all over the place, and they actually brought a Kikimora fleet down here somewhere. There we go. And there were actually big numbers. I think there was 176 initiatives that showed up. Here we go, there we go. And my pen's gone. This is going to be the episode of the pen, clearly. Okay, so my pen, there we go. The initiative is there. And they showed up in bigger numbers than snuffed out. So yeah, I assumed that they managed to get their Kikimoras through a wormhole to show up there. And the initiative have been kind of going on, harassment all the way through. They've been shooting stuff wherever they can, doing a lot of wormhole roams and whaling in period basis, by the looks of it, Paragon Soul, Cash, and popping up all over the place. So they're just kind of really using the war to generate a lot of content for themselves at the moment. Okay, so let's go back to our universe, and that was Esoteria pretty much wrapped up. Then if we go to our universe, like I said, Paragon Soul, not much going on, and period basis, just some whaling happening on there from their point of view, but that's happening everywhere in New Eden. Aquarius, the only thing I need to bring up with Aquarius is down here in the bottom left-hand corner in B-7DFU, a Titan died. Now this Titan, I have the kill mail right here, belongs to Fastkick. Now Fastkick are based in Bolus and are close to the Bastion. I do not believe they're aligned to they're part of the Imperium, but I believe they're aligned to the Imperium. If you remember last week, Fastkick structures were used for the Bastion to project into a victor's territory. But as I understand, Bloody Entertainment, which is the Corp, were part of Red Alliance, and they left, I think, back in February. And it looks like this Ragnarok was trying to make its way to Bolus. So once again, this is speculation. But it got caught. It was within jump range of a lot of legacy capitals. As you can see, a bunch of dreads here on the right. But what's interesting though is if that's the case, this is not a travel fit. There's no cloak, there's no inertial stabs, there's no cap boosters. So this seems like a really strange way if it was traveling for the Ragnarok to travel. And it got caught very easily. I think Independent Horde had a fleet out and they spotted it. They managed to get it pinned down long enough for some heavy interdictors to come in. and then it basically died. So there we go. So one Titan death this week. Titan deaths are pretty rare these days. They're not being undocked anywhere near as much as they used to since their price skyrocketed. Although to be fair, a lot of supers are still dying. There was a super capital that died, a Vendetta, here we go, that died all the way up in Cobalt Edge, of all places, to Odin's Call, a bunch of wormholers. They came out and managed to pin it down and killed 167 billion Vendetta that looks like it was ratting, judging by the sensor boosters on the fit here. So there you go. Really surprising to see a Vendetta being used for ratting, but hey, these things happen. So just once again, a little random death to point out there. These big kills are always worth mentioning. Now, let's jump on to Delve. So now, before we go to Delve, let's go to Fountain. So with Fountain, the one thing I just want to mention is the Siberian squad have been over a week now, have been apparently trying to implant themselves in Fountain, and they keep trying to drop Praetorus, and they keep failing, so they've not managed to do it yet. Now, I didn't mention this last week because I didn't have any proof of this. This week I do, and I have a battle report, which is right here. There we go. So if you're wondering why it's split out into all these groups, it's because this was given to me. Oh, my pen. I don't know what I'm hitting. I'm hitting a button that's really upsetting it this week. There we go. So this was brought to my attention by Fountain Book Club, FI.RE or Fountain Coalition, and they've decided to put themselves into a separate team from the rest of Legacy Coalition who are over here. And then obviously you've got Siberian Squad right here. And then underneath you can see, there we go, there is the Raitaru that was trying to be anchored. And this has happened a number of times apparently, and but I didn't have a battle report up until now. And so we're going to see if Siberian Squad either succeed in anchoring a structure or whether they're going to continue basically failing and feeding to FI.RE, who seem to be very well organized now up in Fountain, I have to say. All right, so let's get on to Delve. Universe and Delve. There we go. Right, so once again, everything is all about these systems here. Now, in previous weeks, if you remember, I've been doing kind of a weekly tally of losses, and I've only included these systems here. And that was because everything that was happening was pretty much based around 3-D MQT. And then if you remember, PAPI have a jump bridge into ETAC V, which means they come in this way. And then the Imperium have a jump bridge into 3-D. Sorry, my squiggles are going all over the place. And so everything was kind of based around all of these systems. Now this has now changed because an Asbel was attempted to be anchored in, I think it was AWA. Let me double check my notes. No, it was in NTAC 8. So it was actually in this system here. But I have decided to include all of these systems as well, because there is a chance that potentially these might get involved. And so from now on, I am going to include all of these systems here in my weekly updates. So there were two main attempts of fights that happened. Both of them arranged. So let me start again. Both of them were arranged around anchoring Asbels. One was on a Monday night and the other one was on a Friday night. Now both of these have happened in the US time zone. The EU time zone has been pretty much dead. I mean, there's been very, very little activity apart from fun fleets from like Karma Fleet and Pandemic Horde. But otherwise, from a strategic point of view, there hasn't kind of been any strategic engagements in EU time zone. It's been only in US, and it's only been 2 this week. And if I bring up my battle reports right now, there we go, let me take my pen off. So the first one was on Monday. Let me scroll back up here. I was busy looking up Harpies. There we go. And as you can see, the one thing that will be of note is if you look very quickly at the numbers here. So Team A, Pandemic Horde, 1600. Goon Swarm or Imperium, 1,874. Look at the next day, Goon Swarm 1,000, Pandemic Horde and PAPI, 762. The next day, Pandemic Horde and PAPI, I keep reading the first line. PAPI 1,185, Imperium 1,211, and it keeps on going. 1,003 to Imperium, 583 to PAPI. And what this is showing is that the Imperium in the US time zone, or in all the time zones, is actually outforming PAPI. And I think this is primarily due to the fact that EU is a very strong time zone for PAPI, and like I said, there's nothing been going on. And so the numbers have kind of been really balanced out. But for some reason, or obviously there's a good reason, PAPI feel that they have a stronger ability to achieve things in the US time zone. So that's why these fights are kicking off in US time zone. Now, if we go back to Monday, this was the one with the really big losses for the Imperium. So 313 billion. And I actually have the totals for the week. It was actually much higher this week for the Imperium. If you remember, it's kind of been going backwards and forwards over the last couple of weeks. So it's 660 billion lost to Imperium versus 454 billion lost to PAPI. And that's all of those systems in that constellation. And as I said, T5ZI and ETAC-V. These are all the, so you can see them actually right here. If I turn my pen off again, just scroll up. Can I scroll up? There we go. So yeah, so all of these, counting all these systems here. Thin pen again. There we go. Right, there we go. All right, so the main thing with the reason for this loss though is down to the Blarpies. Now the Blarpies are the blaster Harpies, and I have a fit here. And what is significant about these is the way they're flown and also their fit. So they're basically a close range fit. So let me turn the pen off so I can hover over. So you can see light neutron blasters. And then what we have is we have a warp scram and we have a web. And these are being used in two different ways. The first way is to actually impede the fighters. So if you remember, the way the Imperium has been fighting is with hack fleets, but primarily by bringing in carriers and bringing in huge swarms of fighters onto either to protect the structures or onto gates, primarily onto gates to protect the gates, and these gates were bubbled, if you remember, and therefore it makes extraction very difficult. Now what the Harpies are doing is they're basically killing these fighters with the blasters, but also they're able to scram them and web them. So they move really slowly, makes them really easy targets. They can't basically pull them back. These fighters are caught and they're dying in droves. And this seems to be a very, very successful element for them. The other thing the Harpies are doing is it turned out they're actually very good at actually breaking up hack fleets. So they're just sent onto, in this case with the Imperium sacrilege fleets, and they're able to pin down these sacrileges and just either approach them or orbit them really tight. The sacrileges have difficulty tracking them, and it gives chance for then an enemy fleet to then get these on top of these hacks and then basically blap them. Obviously the main defense for hack fleets, that's heavy assault cruisers. So we're talking normally Cerberus, Munins, Eagles, Sacrilege, is they can normally move very quickly, so they can normally keep out of range of the enemy's gunfire. And the Harpies are stopping this. And the way these Harpies are flown is they're not flown in a typical fleet formation like you do with the hacks, where you've got an FC with an anchor and everyone anchors and then they all kind of move around as a blob. No, these Harpies are all individually piloted. So each pilot is responsible for flying their own ship. They pick a target, go off and harass and aggress that target until they die. And then if they die, they just basically respawn, get into a new ship and fly back out again. So these are highly disposable ships. They're being used in a disposable fashion, and they're being used in a swarm fleet tactic. So in terms of sort of stuff that died as well in terms of structures, so two Goon Swarm Fortizars died in FTAC-9PXR, and I believe these were the last two Fortizars of the Imperium in Delve outside of the O-EIMK constellation. Then in terms of PAPI Asbels, so 5 PAPI Asbels failed to anchor this week. 2 more anchoring. There is now one anchoring in just after midnight, so on very early hours of Wednesday the 26th. And that's obviously in UTC time zone. And then there's another one anchoring on Friday the 28th. Once again, that's about 3 a.m. UTC. So once again, both in US time zone. And I would expect fleets to be formed for that. Although having said that, the last 5 Asbels, fleets were not formed for all of them. Only 2 big fleets were actually formed, if you recall. So 3 were just left to die uncontested. So there's no guarantee that these 2 Asbels are going to be big fights this week. And I think that pretty much brings me up to date with everything. Okay, and then obviously the battle reports that I showed you earlier, these ones here, as always, I have them linked in the description below if you want to review them for yourself. And then the last thing I wanted to mention as well, just on my universe map, was up here is that in Pure Blind, it was just brought up that Fraternity had basically got themselves an iHub in Pure Blind. And there was this thought that maybe, whoops, big doodles, that Fraternity were going to kind of try and take more SOV. This is not the case. What it involves is Volta, who are up here, that's Volta right there, have been kind of harassing Fraternity into tribute. And so Fraternity decide to provide themselves with some staging in Pure Blind so they can harass back. So that is essentially all that's going on up there. Okay, one last thing, there's no Alliance Spotlight this week. Unfortunately, I've been trying to reach out to a whole bunch of alliances and there's been delays in all directions. So unless I get something in the next day or so, I don't think there's going to be an Alliance Spotlight this week, but I will use this time productively. I have something that I've been wanting to shoot for weeks, but it needs quite a lot of research on my part and quite a lot of work. So in which case, if we don't have an Alliance Spotlight on Thursday, rest assured that I'll be beavering away and working away at some new content for you for upcoming weeks. Okay, and as always, please be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications. Please talk in the comments, mention obviously the keyword for the prize draw and also about stuff that I've talked about. And please come and join me on my Discord. And don't forget to mention me on your Corp Discord and your Alliance Discord. That's all from me. Thank you for watching. Until the next one. Bye.